Detours, brought to you by Sports and Spokes, the magazine for wheelchair sports and recreation. By 5 years old, Rudy Garcia-Tolson endured 15 corrective surgeries to straighten his legs with little positive result. Even at that very young age, he knew one thing: having his legs amputated would give him the opportunity to lead the full, active, and athletic life he'd really craved. Now, at 36 years old, Garcia can reflect back on a life of success that includes 4 trips to the Paralympics in swimming and completion of Ironman Arizona. Rudy, great to have you here.
Good to see you, Bob. It's been a long time.
Yeah, it has, Rudy. I knew you all the way back when you were that kid that we were talking about, and diving off those platforms at that pool. It was pretty cool. Rudy, I want to fast forward and just start jumping right into this. How bold a decision I always thought for a kid, that age, 5, 6 years old, to make a decision, this isn't working, mom and dad, and I want to have a different life. I don't want to sit here. I don't want to dwell anymore. Let's take care of this and move on. What is the discussion like with a mom and a dad, and how did they receive that when you said it's time to move on?
Well, when I was born, the doctors suggested to my mom and dad to amputate my legs through the knee on both sides. And my mom and dad refused. They didn't want me to come back later in my life and question that decision. So I went through more than 15 operations before I was 5 years old. And by the time I got to being five and, really growing up in the hospital, it's not necessarily the funnest place to be. And, I have one older brother, 3 older sisters. So I always looked at my siblings as an example. I wanted to be like them. And the way that was going to happen, that I understood as a 5-year-old, was I needed to get out of the hospital. And by getting out of the hospital, I would have to go through a pretty serious decision, the decision to have my legs amputated. And by me vocalizing that, by me telling my mom and dad, even as a 5-year-old, I think it made them feel comfortable moving forward with that decision, because otherwise I would have to stay in the hospital, continue to go through experimental procedures to try to straighten out my legs. That after 15, we realized none of the surgeries were working. So, to me, that was such an easy black and white decision to have my legs amputated and get out of the hospital, or the other option was to stay in the hospital and continue to go through surgeries. And still today, it's definitely the best decision I've ever made. And I have no second thoughts on that one.
Well, it 100% opened the door to such a big life, and so many people could just never understand that, Rudy. I mean, I get it, and many other people do too, but there's some who would go, "Oh, man, I just continue. I don't wanna lose those legs," but it's amazing when you think the loss, subtracting those 2 legs added, like, a whole life that you never could have imagined.
Absolutely. If you were to tell me as a 5-year-old that I would travel the world, I would go to 5 Paralympic Games, I would win 5 Paralympic medals, I would finish and be the first double above the knee amputee to finish an Ironman, and to continue to give back and to help motivate others, I would have said you're crazy. There's no way. But life has a way of proving people wrong, and has a way of putting us on a path that sometimes we never imagined. And from that one decision, I'm now in a position, being 36 years old now, to help others, to show others what their potential can be. And to me, that's worth more than any medal. That's worth more than any athletic achievement, is to be able to be an example for others, to motivate and inspire others. That to me is very powerful. And I think we all can agree that today, more than ever, the world needs motivation and inspiration. And if I can provide a small part of that, then I'm on the right path.
Yeah, and I want to address that in a little bit, but I'm kind of curious too, Rudy. When it was all said and done, you're out of the hospital, you're healed up, and everything is going along pretty well. Um, was there a transitional period, or was the freedom instantly felt for you?
I would say the freedom was instantly felt. Obviously, soon after the operation, I had to wait for my residual limbs to heal. I had to go through the challenging steps of getting prosthetic legs and learning how to use those, going through the process of breaking over 50 pairs of legs in that first year. Mind you, when I got my first prosthetics, this was in the late 90s, and prosthetics were not for kids. They were geared for some older patients going from the bedroom to the kitchen and back. They weren't geared for me going outside, playing all the different sports, jumping over walls, and landing on my legs. And so there were some challenges really getting used to my new life. But I would say as soon as I found sport, as soon as I found swimming, I gained the confidence to know that even when people around me would tell me that I couldn't do this or I was picked last at school, I had the confidence and the ability to know that I could, and that's power. When you're able to find your confidence and the ability to know that you can prove others wrong, you're able to do whatever you want.
Yeah, that opens the door to this question because, I saw that era too, and I understand that whole prosthetic advancement. Back in those days, they had what I like to refer to as duffer legs. They were those legs that were painted like a flesh color, and completely non-functional when it came to, like you said, having an active athletic life. So I'm curious because you went through the whole era. Do you have any idea how many legs pairs of legs or legs you went through? And where was the point in time, where you felt the greatest advancement with the leg that you are the prostheses today are amazing. They're all balanced out, weighted out for each individual. Where did you see the greatest advancement?
Sure. Well, I would say as a young kid in those first few years, I broke, as I said, over 50 pairs, and
That's
it
incredible.
was a situation where I would be at school in first, second, third grade, and I would get back to class after being at recess, and I would realize a piece of my leg was missing, a screw or something that just wasn't working right, and I noted you can notice that when you're walking, and so I get back to class and I would tell my teacher, "Hey, I'm missing the screw." So we would have to go back out and we would send a search party out to the playground to kind of find that piece of my missing leg. And that was a theme kind of going through elementary school. And really, I would say when I got my first pair of running feet, the carbon fiber feet that kind of look like a C, my C sprints, that was a moment that I realized that the technology and my prosthetics were finally able to keep up with what I'm doing. And
And
now
and and about what year was that?
I would say that I got my first pair of running legs, I would say in 2001. So I
Okay.
was I was still quite a young guy. I got my first pair of running legs, and around that same time, technology started to be integrated with prosthetics, and that's when really the first computer microprocessor legs came out in the early 2000s, and that was the moment I realized that we're heading into a whole new era of prosthetics where they're
Undoubtedly.
no longer made of wood, they're no longer made to look like a actual real leg. They're now made with technology, and that is going to allow individuals with limb loss to really do any and everything, whether it's hiking, whether it's running, or whatever it is. We were going to be able to live a life without limitations. And now the prosthetics that I have on now are really the fourth generation of microprocessor legs. And so I've seen the advancements, and I'm just it's amazing to be part of the community, and I can't wait to see what they're going to be like in the next 10 to 20 years.
Hey, Rudy, when you refer to a microprocessor leg, what does that mean specifically?
It means that it's a very smart leg. So we have smartphones, we have smart cars, now we have smart legs, which means it's watching and it's reading the way I'm living my life. Whatever activity I'm doing, it's reading and it's providing me with assistance. So while I'm walking throughout my day of 12 hours, being at work, going to different events, going to schools and talking to kids, my prosthetics give me energy return, which means I'm using 20 to 30% less energy because my prosthetics, my microprocessors, the computers in the legs are providing me with that assistance. So I don't have to think as much about keeping my balance, about tripping on certain obstacles throughout my day, and really it's allowing individuals to really just live life without limits, which is amazing.
No, really, I hear that. It's a quantum improvement in life just by energy savings alone.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really stepping in the direction of bionics, and we the more we advance with the technology, whether it's in the sporting prosthetics or the everyday prosthetics, they're really really tearing down the barriers on how people used to view us. People used to look at us and say, "Oh, poor guy, he doesn't have any legs." And now they're saying, "Well, of course he can beat me. He has 2 prosthetic legs." So it's the attitude is completely changed, and now the guy with no legs is faster than guys with 2 legs, and that's the reason. The unfair advantage is now the advantage. So it's quite
Oh, no, it was
interesting.
incredible.
Yeah.
I remember covering, an event where, a guy from GB, Johnny Peacock,
Oh
was
yeah.
running 10-second 100
Oh
meters,
yeah.
and I thought, "Wow, that's" we have moved into a legit category. Hey, Rudy, what's the basic cost of a pair of athletically designed, carbon fiber legs?
Sure. Well, a lot of it depends on what type of level of amputation the user has. Is it a single above the knee? If they're a single
Below the
below the
knee.
knee? If they're a
Yeah,
double?
right.
So a lot of that varies. But I would say
Yeah.
that your average cost of the components and the labor of putting together a socket can be anywhere from $5,000 to $30,000, depending on the components. Now, as you know, for a lot of us athletes who have disabilities, that's really unattainable. That's really hard to get. And so, one of my life missions is to try to provide these prosthetics, these sporting prosthetics, to people around the world. And really, that's what Challenge Athletes Foundation does. So, it's just something that I'm very proud of to be involved in, to play a small role, and making sure that whether you have the ability to get these prosthetics, CAF is going to be there to provide grants. And looking at the grand scheme of things, one of my microprocessor legs, just one of them, is upwards to $30,000 to $50,000. So I have two of them, so that's upwards of $100,000, and
Correct.
that's very unattainable for a majority of the world. So I think one advancement we're watching is 3D printing, is the ability to 3D print a socket and the components and ship those printers around the world. And you're really not only giving somebody a new leg, you're giving them the ability to provide for the family. And that's the direction we're headed. So we're very excited for that direction.
We'd like to take a minute to thank our sponsor, Sports and Spokes Magazine. For nearly 50 years, they've produced stories on iconic athletes performing at the top of their game, given generational coverage of sports dating back to the 1970s, and they've shown the way with exciting and timeless magazine cover shots. To stay on top of all the latest news from the world of high performance adaptive sports, go to sportsandspokes.com. Sports and Spokes, the magazine for wheelchair sports and recreation. So challenged athletes, or CAF as we just commonly refer to it, they've done a whole lot for a whole lot of years, and you must be pretty proud to be involved with that. What's your take on being a mentor, and how is it that you provide guidance for, kids, adults, anybody who ends up with a disability, be it a chair or a prosthetic leg? What's the process?
Sure.
How do you
So
work it?
A big role that I play with CAF is going and meeting new people who have are recently injured, whether they're in the hospital shortly after an accident, whether they acquire a disability later in life. I'm able to go to these people and really relate to them to understand the challenges from day one until they get their first prosthetic and they run their first marathon, or they get their new sports wheelchair and join the local wheelchair basketball team. So, a lot of being able to be a resource to these individuals is just sharing my experiences and knowing that I understand what they are going through and will go through. And also very important for them to understand that there are organizations like the Challenge Athletes Foundation that want to support, that can provide the pieces of equipment. As we all know, sports is not a luxury. Sports is a right. And a lot of times the challenge for people getting back into the game of life is getting the piece of equipment so they can do that. And as we talked about, equipment is expensive, and CAF provides that equipment through grants. We also do a lot of different sport clinics and events, so people can come to our clinics, try a new sport, and say, "That's what I want to do." Apply for a grant, and they can get their own piece of equipment and continue to live life. So it's pretty amazing.
Real nice. Hey, Rudy, let's talk about you, the jock. 5 Paralympics, 2 gold, 2 silver, 1 bronze in swimming, and you've completed an Ironman as a bilateral amp. So, of those memories that you take away from years and years of busting it down the road and flying here and there and doing all it takes, what are some of your great memories? Think back on some of those games. Give me something that really sticks out.
Bob, when we reconnected recently, you sent me a video that we did at ESPN Hot Pursuit, and I believe I was about 8 years old in that video. And I said in that video, when I was 8 years old, my goal is to go to the 2004 Paralympic Games, and I told you the events I wanted to do. Well, flash forward 8 years. When I was 16, I went to my first Paralympics in Athens, where I came home with my first gold medal in the 200 IM. And I would say there is nothing like the first time going to the Paralympics as a young guy, being the youngest male on the Team USA Paralympic swim team, was an experience I will never forget. And then, really going through the day in and day out training. I did most of my training living at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, where I crossed paths with many other Paralympic and Olympic athletes. I would say one of my most memorable practices is being able to hop into the pool with Michael Phelps to swim in his lane in the same workout. Well, while his coach Bob Bowman was yelling at us, giving us our splits and giving us feedback, those type of moments I will remember for forever. And then, of course, my last Paralympic Games in Tokyo, which happened to be the COVID Games,
Uh-huh.
postponed 1 year. Going through those challenges of starting almost as a retired athlete back in 2020 to saying I'm going to make my next Paralympics, and that was in Tokyo. And to me, the medals are amazing, but it's about the journey. It's about being with my teammates who I've grown up with, to experience going on team trips, meeting other athletes from international countries, and making lifelong friends. Those are the memories I'm going to remember for forever. And it did go by fast. I will say that went by like a flash.
It does indeed. So I was there when you were a kid. I watched you as an adolescent as you move forward in the sport, and now here you are. You're basically the age I was when I interviewed you the first time. So as you reflect back and look forward, what does the future look like for adaptive sports?
Well, we are in a moment that is very exciting. The next Paralympic and Olympic Games are coming up here in 3 short years in Los Angeles, here in the United States of America. And that's going to be a pinnacle moment for adaptive sports, for disability. It's really going to open the door and show people around our country that we, as Paralympic athletes, we train the same, we work just as hard as our Olympic athletes, and we deserve the same recognition as our Olympic teammates, and we're going to see household names like Michael Phelps. We're going to see those in the Paralympic world. And when the United States is able to showcase the power of disability, the power of overcoming obstacles, you're going to see people watching at home relating to us Paralympic athletes and saying, wow, if that guy can do it, then so can I. And that's our hope. That's our mission. And we're going to see that firsthand in 3 short years. And really, the technology is changing. The attitude around disability is changing. And I don't know what the future holds for us, but I can tell you it's going to be good.
Well, hey, man, all the way back to when you were 8 years old, you signed a little athlete card for me, a couple pictures on there, and you wrote, "A brave heart is our powerful weapon." And I've kept that. That remains in my home to this day. Rudy, you've done a great job. You definitely are an example of what can be done when you just want it to happen and you don't sit by idly and wait for it to happen. So great job, man. Paralympic medals, traveled the globe, an ambassador, a mentor, just a really great example. Thanks, Rudy.
Thank you, Bob. Good to talk to you.
You too.